Alright, here's my, my quick and dirty on how you do some editing of text in Lightburn. So I've picked a font here that I know has some of these thin lines. You can see them here, and you notice my spacing is already set to kind of move these together, but I don't have welding turned on. You can do this with it on already or with it out it on. When I'm doing words, I leave it off and then I manually weld them together a lot of times. That way I can kind of keep the spacing and fix some of these things. So over here, this is node editing, and you'll see node editing here in a second. So if I select this text and I click node editing, it does nothing. And it does nothing because it's not a path. So that's the first thing I have to do, is convert it to a path. So I simply right click, convert to path. Now, when I select node editing, I get these, and these are the nodes that make up how that path is created for the letters or the word. So say we want to thicken up this little line right here, I can shift and click on a couple nodes, and I just know this from doing it a lot, and drag those down. Now say I want to fix up this little curve here, because you'll notice it's kind of janky. So I can select this node and tweak that curvature, and notice as I move it from that point, it kind of fixes the curve. I could also delete that curve, or that node, simplify that part of the curve, and tweak it accordingly. So that's why you really got to play with node editing a lot to get a good feel for it. So after I've made that change, we can see how that kind of looks there. And then I can come back here, select these two, and weld them together. Now, you'll notice up here, it didn't get the inside of the E, so you can either group them together manually, or weld that in, which is just grouping, really, at that point anyways. Now another thing I know from experience is the weakest point is a point. So a lot of times when I'm welding letters together to make a word, I will come into it, node edit, and you'll notice the nodes didn't show up even though I clicked the button. That's because there's more than one path, and I have to ungroup. So back to that point, literally. I insert a couple of nodes here, that's the I key, and delete this one out. And then it kind of creates a little path here, and a lot of times it will create a nice little curvature to it. If it doesn't create it, you can kind of zoom in. You can tweak these nodes, or you can insert a node and smooth it. Say if these were corner nodes, because corner nodes don't create curves very well. They create corners, thus their name. So you can kind of just take another node, smooth it, and create a little curvature, and then it's going to be less likely to break. Now say if I was manually putting all this together and I wanted all my other stuff, like this S here, to be a little bit closer, I'd select these three spots. A lot of times I just use my positioning and move it to where I want. So then obviously this is going to look terrible if we weld this together. So I'll ungroup it, I'll edit the nodes, and what I'll do is I'll just come up here and delete off some of these nodes to get it inside. Once it's inside that letter, I don't care how that tip looks, because it's going to go away when I weld it. So then I've got that, and then I'm going to do the same thing with this T over here. I'm going to kind of move it back, highlight it a little bit tighter there, I highlight it together, and then I weld it, and then I'm like, oh man, this right here is going to be terrible, because that's going to be super thin. Well, again, node edit, group it, and since this is essentially a straight line, what I could do here is just insert, delete, 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 and see that thickens up. And I could go down one more. And same thing here. I could actually take this one and probably delete it out and create that nice little line there. And then see right here, I got a similar instance. So I'm going to insert a node there. And if I come up here and delete this, it creates that for me. So that fixes that, And say if, like I spoke about earlier, I want a little curve here, I'll insert that, delete that node, and see that's a perfect example where it creates a flat spot. And that's where I would come in and see how it adds that weirdness there. Insert another node, smooth it, and then zoom in a little bit further and give it a curve. And then take these and try to fix them so that they don't have this little jagged edge. There we go. And that's it. So now I would take that, everything's highlighted, I would group it all together, and then I would move it down onto my cut area and tell the laser to do its job. Anyway, thanks for coming to my node editing words in Lightburn TED Talk.